So, hello everyone. This is Margot from Wyndham Regional Commission, and we have a small gathering tonight of our Southeast Energy Committees. But I'm really excited to introduce to everybody Geoff Martin. He is the Intermunicipal Energy Coordinator for 7 towns in the north center part of the state. And he's going to be sharing a little bit about his experience in working with the towns, how this came about, and how towns have funded his position and what they've been working on. So, Geoff, I'm going to pass it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Margot. I'll share my screen. Okay, does that look good?
It looks great.
All right. Thanks for inviting me, and yeah, excited to talk about the IREC program. It is definitely a bit of a mouthful. So it's Intermunicipal Regional Energy Coordinator. I just call it the IREC program. And so as Margot said, it's a collaboration among 7 towns in our region. So the towns that are circled in red there are part of the group. It's Barnard, Bradford, Norwich, Sharon, Stratford, Thetford, and Woodstock are all part of this collaboration. And it came together as really like championed by a community leader. So Nick Clark was a select board member in Thetford. And he really wanted to have, staff support for implementing the town's energy plan. But felt like, hiring a full-time person just for Thetford didn't make a lot of sense, just in terms of like being able to fund a full-time position. And also, Thetford's not a huge town. It might not require a full-time position. And he also saw that there could be benefits from towns working together and collaborating on these issues. And so he kind of came up with that concept, and then worked with Two Rivers to figure out how this position could actually play out and work. And then he also met with towns surrounding Thetford to talk about the idea and get people excited. And ultimately, it went to the various town meetings and passed. At that time, it was 6 towns, and it's since changed a little bit and expanded to 7. So the IREC, in this case, that I'm a Two Rivers employee. So Two Rivers, manages the position and is responsible for sort of the day-to-day administration of the position. Programs partially funded by the towns, and then also partially funded by Two Rivers. So it is kind of a shared cost among the towns and the regional commission. And then there's a steering committee that really guides the work plan. So that steering committee is made up of one representative from each of the towns, and the members are appointed by their select boards. At this point, every person on the steering committee is also on their town's energy committee. That wasn't the case originally. There was one staff person and another person who just wasn't on the energy committee anymore, but it makes a lot of sense that those members are on their energy committee and kind of plugged into the energy goals and initiatives of the town. And the steering committee, they are, by the contract that we have put together with the towns and with Two Rivers, the steering committee is responsible for and is really the authority on what I work on, what I spend my time on. They get to make that decision. Obviously, anything that involves town funding. So, the steering committee member couldn't, approve a project or something like that, but they get to decide where I spend my time. But we do make sure that whatever I'm working on is sort of in line with what the select board and town staff think I should be working on, because we don't want to waste the time either. So the goal of the program is to implement a regional and town energy plans. the focus, most of the focus to this point, so it was started in August of 2020, and most of the focus at this point has been on municipal infrastructure and operations. But we are beginning to transition to community level efforts, and I'll talk more about that a bit later. A lot of the work has involved data gathering and assessment, projects like physical projects in town buildings, policies, a little bit of policy work, demonstrations, and then some of the community level actions. So data gathering, if you're on an energy committee, you may have seen this tool on the left here, the Energy Star Portfolio Manager. It's the EPA's commercial building benchmarking tool. Allows you to gather town energy data, whether it's like electricity consumption or heating fuel consumption, and put that into this database. And with that, you can see which buildings or facilities are using the most energy, or which buildings are the least efficient, and helps target your projects towards those buildings that need the most work or are going to have the biggest impact. And it also sets a baseline for the town to understand its current energy usage and track progress over time. And the other thing that I've done for most of the towns that were interested in it, a lot of towns I'm working with have climate goals and greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. So I've done greenhouse gas emission inventories for most of the towns, again, to get that baseline assessment, understand where the emissions are coming from in the town, and track progress over time. So these are examples of the projects in municipal buildings, and this is, I think, probably the bulk of my time has been spent on these, developing these projects. So the two projects that have been completed so far. First is the Barnard Town Hall. You see pictured there. Completed a weatherization project that ultimately reduced air leakage in that building by 1/3. So we expect to see, I think, if I remember correctly, it was like 500 gallons less fuel oil use annually as a result of that project. And now we're working with a consultant to come up with a plan to get that building off of oil. So that's kind of the next step in that process. In the Sharon Library, we got rid of the oil furnace in that building, got rid of the oil tank, and put in a ducted heat pump system with electric resistance backup. So that building is totally electrified. There is no fossil fuel left in that building, which is awesome. And then some ongoing projects, a big one in Woodstock, where there are 5 municipal buildings where we will be weatherizing the buildings, putting in heat pumps, lighting retrofits. And that funding for those projects was approved by the voters at the last town meeting. And so spent the summer working with the company to refine the work scope and put together final designs for that and final pricing, which we'll be presenting to the select board the 1st of November. So hopefully getting those projects on the moving, this hopefully by this winter. And then Thetford Town Hall, same idea, putting in heat pumps, getting that building almost completely off of propane. We'll just have a propane furnace as backup for any power outages, so that the generator is just running the furnace instead of the heat pumps. The select board just approved that project last month. And then in Bradford, we're kind of in the initial development stage. Bradford was a town that joined a year after the program started. So we're still in the development phase with the Bradford Academy, which is the biggest building I've ever worked with. It's 37,000 square feet. It's their town hall, and also it's got a lot of office space that they rent out. So we're working with a company to put together some different options for improving the efficiency of the building and trying to lower the fuel oil use in that building. A little bit of policy work, put together a green procurement policy that 3 of the 7 towns have adopted. The idea with this policy is to basically put in place a policy and then procedures that the town follows during their budget development process to ensure that they are looking at the cleanest or most efficient options. You know, if they're, for example, going to be replacing a vehicle, there's a process in place to make sure that they're looking to see if there's an electric option or a hybrid option, and that they're at least considering it and justifying why they're not going with that option if one exists. And a little bit of work on zoning bylaws. It's not by any means my area of expertise, but that's one of the nice things about working at Two Rivers is I've got staff that definitely know all there is to know about zoning. So I've been working with Kevin Geiger on putting together a document that has recommendations for towns to make changes to their zoning bylaws that'll improve the efficiency of buildings and reduce energy consumption in the transportation sector. So things like EV ready and solar ready standards, and trying to encourage higher density development. There's a couple of examples of the things in that document that we've shared with the towns. Demonstrations are kind of a small part of what we've done, but a fun part. I think, like especially when it comes to vehicles, you know, I think there's a bit of hesitation moving towards electric vehicles, and so getting people to actually get to test them out and try things out, and talk with others that have used them, I think is hopefully going to pay off in the end. So the picture on the left is a demonstration that we did on the town green in Woodstock with an electric mower, and we had the Department of Public Works from Woodstock and Norwich came to that. We also did it with some of the schools in our area. And then the picture on the right is the town of Richmond has a Tesla in their police vehicle fleet. And so we invited the police chief to come down with that vehicle, and 4 of the towns that I work with that have police departments, their staff came out and got to talk with the police chief and look in the vehicle. One person actually got to drive it. So that was fun. I don't know if any of the towns will be getting a Tesla anytime soon, but again, it's at least exposing people to the technology and allowing for those conversations to happen, to get people starting to think about seeing themselves in an electric vehicle. And then the move towards the community level, there's a few things going on here. One, we've developed a community solar project in Stratford, and for that project we partnered with the Vermont Law School and their energy clinic to find a site in Stratford, and then find a developer and do outreach to the community. We ended up fully subscribing the array, and the array has been permitted. So we're just in the initial stages of construction at this point. But I think about 20 residents will be participating in that array. We also put together a climate action plan for our region, or for 6 out of the 7 towns that I'm working with. And then we essentially like took that plan and boiled down the actions to the actions that we felt would benefit the most from collaboration among our 6 towns. And then had a meeting with energy committees from those 6 towns and figured out which of those collaborative actions we wanted to work on over the coming year. So we ended up picking 2, and we've got working groups that are beginning to actually work and implement these actions. The first one is climate action guidelines and demonstrations. The idea has morphed a little bit from what we were thinking originally, but basically we want to have a website that's housed on our Two Rivers website that energy committees can go to for resources on anything climate related. So that's all in one place and it's up to date, so that they can draw from that if they're going to be, starting a campaign in a certain area or wanting to talk with the public about something. And then we want to do demonstrations too, like potentially like a EV showcase or a solar showcase, and we want to do those demonstrations regionally, to try to bring more excitement to those demonstrations. And then the second action that's come out of that climate action plan that we're working on currently is basically building efficiency and electrification. So originally the plan was to focus narrowly on increasing compliance with the residential building energy standards, which is the Vermont Building Energy Code. And we've decided to broaden our focus a little bit and also include things that towns can do to improve efficiency and help residents move away from fossil fuel in their homes. And so we've put together a draft list of possible actions that towns could take to advance those goals. And I think our plan is to try to have planning commissions and select boards from the towns all get together and do a joint meeting and talk about these possible actions, with the hope of maybe applying some peer pressure, so that towns see other towns deciding to take these actions, that might encourage towns that might otherwise be a little hesitant to do the same thing. And then finally, this ARPA funded town home energy bonus is something that I really hope is going to happen. I'm not sure yet, but basically we have proposed using some of the town ARPA money that all towns received ARPA funding from the federal government, and so using some of that to incentivize income qualified residents to do things like weatherize, put in heat pumps or heat pump water heaters. And the idea would be that Two Rivers would actually manage and administer that program. So the town would need to just commit to providing the funding, and then Two Rivers could really handle the rest of the work. So it would really decrease the administrative burden on the town. And that's an idea that has been not officially approved yet by the Barnard Select Board, but we met with them last month and they were very excited about the idea. So we're going to go back with a more formalized plan, and I hope that they will commit to it. And then we're going to try to get other towns, both within the IREC program as well as the broader Two River region, to hopefully do the same thing. And we would sort of earmark their funds for their towns, and run that program for as many towns as want to participate. So that's all I've got for a presentation, but happy to answer questions too.
That was really fantastic, Geoff. It's so exciting to hear about the breadth and type of programming that you're doing with the different towns. I'm wondering, sound like Barnard came on after the program started. Was it hard to integrate a town after all the others had started?
So it was Bradford
Oh,
and
Bradford.
yeah, one of the B towns. Bradford and Norwich actually both came on the second year, and one of the towns dropped out. One of the original towns dropped out. So yeah, it was a bit of a transition, but it wasn't too difficult. I think the hardest thing was just like getting the program off the ground. And so once I had done that, originally, kind of had a process, I guess, that I could use when Bradford and Norwich joined in the second year, and then it's a little bit just a little bit difficult bringing in new members onto the steering committee, but that transition happened pretty quickly. And so I think it works to have towns come in and out. I mean, ideally towns would just continue on. It makes that continuity is good, but I think it works fine to to have towns come in and out like that.
Anyone can jump in at any point if you have a question.
Well, having dealt with the Rockingham Select Board, I'm just trying to imagine them collaborating with 6 other towns. It kind of boggles the mind. They they tend to have a very narrow focus.
Well, the nice thing about the way that the program was designed is that you don't have, select boards coming together for joint meetings. I did mention that we might try to do that for that building efficiency working group. But generally speaking, select boards aren't having to come together for meetings or really agree on anything regionally. It's the steering committee that does that work, and so that makes it a lot easier.
Well, they still had to agree to fund their share of
That's
your
true.
position.
That's true.
Yeah, that I'm trying to imagine proposing that to Rockingham. Someday, maybe.
So do you go back to the select boards of each of the towns on a regular basis or once a year? Or how's that kind of working to keep or do the committee members go back to their select boards to update them?
For updates, yeah. I write monthly reports on anything that I've done over the past month for their town. So that's one way to communicate with the towns. Sometimes, like for example, in Sharon, the steering committee member meets with the select board quarterly, just to get their ideas and feedback. And then usually there are enough projects going on that I'll go to select board meetings to talk about progress or to get approval on things. So there's a decent amount of communication, and again, at least those monthly reports.
And do each of those towns have their own energy committees?
Yes, every one of the towns has an energy committee.
So I think you said the steering committee currently has its one member from each of those energy committees. Do the
Right.
energy committees do work outside of this?
Yes. Yeah. So, like I said, the focus has been mostly on municipal operations and infrastructure. So that's been kind of like what the IREC program has worked on, while the energy committees have continued to do community level outreach and programs like that. So yeah, definitely they're still continuing with their efforts while we're doing our work.
My question is actually for Peter. Could you imagine having the support of somebody like Geoff for the work? When we look at our goals, it's like, yeah, pie in the sky,
Yeah,
for us to try to do it as volunteers.
yeah, we don't do very much with the municipal buildings. I know that's what some energy committees focus on, but yeah, that would be exciting.
But just knowing the goals, that we have to have that kind of support could make quite a difference.
Mm-hmm.
One of the arguments, and I don't know, Geoff, if you can speak to this at all, but it occurs to me that an incentive for a town might be it could lower their costs in the long run of energy use. So they're putting money into a program that's helping them, into the future. Does that work that way, Geoff? Did that ever come up? Or
Yeah, it's definitely come up. And I would say it's I personally would not want to sell it on that argument. I mean, there are savings to be had with weatherization, with fuel switching, but particularly today, the cost of heat pumps and just the cost of anything, but cost of weatherization, it's so expensive that the payback is not as great as it used to be. Although with the cost of oil and propane, that is changing. But and you know, the other thing I think, there's a lot of potentially federal funding coming, and potentially state funding as well. So it, you know, could be an opportunity to set the town up for getting funding or getting grants that are coming down the pike. But I would be uncomfortable making that argument, because if it doesn't happen, that
So what were some of the, I mean, I like Peter, you know, when I think about some of the select boards, you know, they're wanting to be very fiscally responsible and tight sometimes, in some of our communities. And, you know, what were some of the motivations for select boards to go this route?
I think, you know, most of the towns are very motivated to meet their energy and climate goals. So there are a couple towns that are also very focused on cost savings. But yeah, I think that the primary driver has been just reducing energy consumption, reducing emissions, and trying to actually, you know, meet their energy objectives. Yeah, I'd say that's been the primary driver.
Well, I want to say hello to Laurel. Laurel, this is Kimbria. Nice
I
to see
know.
you. I haven't
Yes,
seen
good
you
to
in
see you too.
years. So I'm actually living in New York, but I ran programs like yours, Geoff, in New Hampshire, and was involved in Vermont when I lived in Brattleboro. So that's how I'm still on the email loop for this. And I've been watching everybody. And so New York is about to launch a big program for disadvantaged communities through NYSERDA. And it's actually the first time that I've seen any real money get put towards energy efficiency, like a program like you're running. So, yeah. So there's going to be a ton of money. They want 40% of the recipients to be from disadvantaged communities, 40% of the funding.
Mhm.
That's their goal. Actually, the goal in the grants is 30%, but they're targeting 40%. And they're reaching out to disadvantaged communities, even if they, like nonprofits and businesses, even if they don't know anything about renewable energy or didn't run a program like I ran. If they're responding to their communities, then they want them to come in as the community organizing piece, and then we can teach them about energy efficiency. And it's going to be a sea change in New York State. So I'm expecting to come in as a consultant for that. And they asked me to apply for the steering committee for the state. So I don't know whether I'm going to be chosen for that. I think they're going to lean heavily on members from disadvantaged communities for the steering committee, but they asked me to apply, so I did. And so they're actually putting so much energy and money into building a program that is representative of the people who they're trying to target. I've never seen, I mean, New Hampshire, I ran a program back in 2013 where we installed pellet boilers. And we had the most pellet boilers per capita at the time in 2013, 2014 in the US. And it may still be so in Berlin, New Hampshire, that they still have that. And so we don't have a northern forest around us here, so we're not going to be doing anything like that. But they're really looking at innovative strategies and investing heavily. And so I'm wondering if Vermont, I mean, I know Vermont it was above, before the curve in front of New York. So I'm wondering if Vermont is also sort of focusing that kind of funding. And of course, it's not disadvantaged communities, or it's not Black and brown communities. It's people who are farmers and have these ancient technologies in their on their farms or on their workplaces or in their community buildings that really need a major renovation. And so I'm wondering if you've heard anything about that in the wind, a serious commitment like New York is doing.
Yeah, and Margot, feel free to jump in too. I mean, I know that there's been a lot of talk about that in the Vermont's climate action plan and the comprehensive energy plan. Haven't seen any programs yet, and Margot, maybe you have. You know, I'm not sure the status of a program that was going to help municipalities in towns that have high energy burden to basically like weatherize their buildings and fuel switch, get off of fossil fuels. That was something that passed the legislature this past session, but got kind of caught up in the ARPA regulations, and I'm not sure what the status of that program is. And that's like, I get probably the one thing that I've heard of, besides, you know, some of the goals and objectives in the comprehensive energy plan and the climate action plan. Margo, have you heard of anything else?
No, I mean, I think the state is putting a lot into weatherization, and we're gonna see a lot more coming down that path.
Yeah.
But, you know, is a lot of this takes time to figure out programs and how they'll operate. And I do think the municipal fuel switching, which is sometimes that's the common name for it, will be coming, but it just will take time again to figure out the details and what it will exactly look like.
What about lenders? Like when we, for the program in New Hampshire, we were able to buy down, that was ARA funding, and we were able to buy down interest rates for people so that they were able to get a 1% loan. That's one of the ways that we facilitated the switchover. So what about lenders? Are lenders jumping? I know that there was a bank, a credit union that I used in Brattleboro that was having green loans.
The SECU.
Yeah.
And there's a couple, at least one other bank that offers, I think it's called the home energy loan, which is exactly like you're talking about. I think there's even a no interest loan if you're qualified, income qualified. So yeah, I shouldn't say that nothing's happening. That, I mean, that exists, and there's also, like Margot said, special, you know, increased incentives if you're below a certain income threshold for weatherization and heat pumps and EVs. So there's definitely increased funding. I was trying to think of like a comprehensive program like you were talking about in New York, and there's nothing to my knowledge like that, but there's definitely increased incentives.
So one of the issues that we had in New Hampshire was that people maybe weren't able to get the blown, God, I'm not even remembering the phrase anymore. The cellulose, or the spray foam. If their roof needed work, they couldn't get the spray foam, right? So there were various issues with the house. They weren't able to get everything that they could have gotten. And what I'm going to be recommending is that we target the people who have already gone through these things and didn't have, you know, their roof wasn't appropriate. And because now they're going to be funding some of those issues, those barriers for people. So especially for disadvantaged communities. So if you're in what's been identified as an opportunity zone, which in New York they're calling disadvantaged communities too. And so if you're in a certain section, you're going to get a lot more benefits, and some of them are going to be linked to the building structure, and if there are barriers that are because of the building, instead of you know, that you're not going to be able to save money or some other barrier. So they're going to start doing that. And one of the things that I learned when I was running that program was, these are the issues. You know, we actually got trailer homes, renovated a little bit, air sealed and insulated, which everybody said you couldn't do because they're just tin cans, right? And so we were able to work with some special installers that were able to go in there and weatherize. And these were the senior Quebecois that were retired into these homes, and they were freezing all winter, So that's one of the disadvantaged communities up there. So there's the building science, trying to renovate the building science, fix the buildings so that then you can add whatever you want to add. And then I would definitely, suggest that, and, I would strongly suggest that people look into changing their fuel source, because you are going to save. It may be more expensive right now, but you will save because it's not going to go down. The costs of energy are not going down.
Yeah.
We have moments, but with everything going on with OPEC, and I just don't see them ever getting, below $2 a gallon or whatever for oil. Or so if you're with the Energy Star, you can predict what the costs are going to be if you don't. And these, people work hard for their money. They don't want to be paying for the municipal building, just so that the pipes don't freeze. We were able to help a church that was now a community center, and it was like $12 an hour or something for oil. And we put in 2 pellet boilers for it because it was a huge building, and they went down to like, a fifth of what they were paying for heat. So
Yeah.
it does really help over time.
Yeah, that's a good point. It definitely depends, coming back to the question that Margot posed about whether such a program would pay for itself over time. Depends on, I think, like the status of the municipal building. So if you have a very inefficient building that hasn't been weatherized, if you have a old heating system that's going to need to be replaced anyways, that's a very different picture than a building that already has been weatherized and maybe has a newer heating system, and you're just going to put in, say, heat pumps
Right.
to lower fossil fuel use. That might not be an investment that's going to pay for itself. But if you're putting in, if you have to put in a new heating system anyways, the building hasn't been weatherized, that's an opportunity for savings for sure.
There's something else that we did in New Hampshire. There's a group called PARE, Plymouth Area Renewable Energy Initiative. And we started something called BARE, Berlin Area Renewable Energy Initiative. And in winter, we installed citizen installations of solar thermal arrays. And New Hampshire had unbelievable incentives. And because of the ARRA funding, I actually was able to give away 5 solar thermal arrays, up to $2,500. And we gave it to a veteran or a military guy. We gave it to a bunch of older folks, and so for the cities, maybe the municipalities that have more hot water use, that might be a way for you to make people, like, get them really engaged in being part of the solution and seeing what the transformation can, as long as you have to have an electrician and a plumber, and everybody else can learn how to do it. There's soldering, there's so much fun. And when they're done, people are like, wow, this is really amazing. If you want, I can send out the link to the recordings from our installations that I put on YouTube as part of my proposal package for getting on with NYSERDA as a consultant. I showed them what I had done already. And if you want, I can send out to the group a link to the installations. And there's a lot of, people soldering and stuff. You don't have to watch the whole thing, but it was really a way to get everybody understanding that they can actually do this themselves. They can take control, and it doesn't have to be a $15,000 installation when you get the local people doing it. And if you just and we had people, they had to commit to being in 5 installations, and they went through and they learned, and PARE came up and taught them, taught us how to do it. And, you know, gradually we installed 5 solar thermal arrays, and, you know, they got the solar water heaters and things like that. So, I mean, very can do New England sort of thing, you know?
Very
Yeah.
cool. It sounds a lot like the
Margo,
window dressers.
I have your email. Sorry. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, it just sounds a lot like the model of window dressers, which I know a lot of towns have done, but with solar thermal. But yeah, the same idea of, you know, bringing together volunteers and bringing down costs and building community.
And if you do it on your municipal buildings, you know, that means the hot water when you're having the meetings, or you can actually, you know, you can be warming things with that hot water depending on how big your tank is and how big your array is, you know. So
Mhm.
you could do, you know, there's whatever, you know, my business tagline is no limitations beyond design considerations. Whatever you can think up, you can do, you know. So it's just anyway.
So
I thought if
Cambria,
you were
yeah,
nice enough to let me come in and bomb your meeting, I would just offer some things that were successes earlier, so.
Yeah. well,
Thank you.
Cambria, I was gonna suggest, you know, I know you have my email, but I put it in
Mhm.
here in the chat anyway. If you want to send, you know, some resources, I can send that along to everyone,
Mhm.
and, you know, that'd be great. So
Sure.
Jeff, I don't know if there's any last burning questions, but I want to make sure that, you know, Jeff is able to go and enjoy his evening. We've kind of come to the time that we've allotted for this. But
It was a good presentation, Jeff.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
it was very helpful.
Thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me.